I think that's always true of like any disaster. Like disasters exasperate vulnerabilities, and it will tell you what your gaps are, and it'll tell you what you're really good at. Obviously, the last outstanding, duh, but it also shows you what you're worst at, and it will show you in the most obvious way possible. And so like that again, just great call out there. So let's talk about like the filming process. Obviously, at Brock Long on there, you had several experts on there. What conversations to you were most impactful, and what would you want the audience to like take away from those conversations?
We had so many experts on there that had great things to say. There was a gentleman on there, Eris Papadopoulos, who wrote a book called Resilience: The Ultimate Sustainability. And Eris has so many memorable lines in the film where he talks about building codes and how builders lobby for lower standards because they can make more money, and everything that's counterintuitive to the person who's buying the house. You're buying
Yeah.
something and you're all excited about it. If you were buying a car and you found out that the manufacturers really didn't want to put brakes in it, they really didn't want to have airbags, they really weren't worried about things that could kill you, you might not buy that car. Yet we buy the house anyway because it's decorated nice. It has pretty countertops and
Yeah.
the latest carpet or tile or whatever, the wood floors. So Eris was amazing with the things he said. Brock Long, you've had him on your show. That guy is so knowledgeable and has so much experience. And I told you it's kind of funny when we sat down to do the interview with him. They were like, "How did you guys get in here? We don't normally let filmmakers in here because everybody wants to blast FEMA and go after them because they're like the organization that is there for you. But if something goes wrong, everybody's going to pounce on them."
Yeah.
And I made it clear to them, look, we're not pouncing on anybody. We want to just talk to people and find out how we do things better. So Brock was terrific. We met a professor at George Washington University that was great. And all our experts, if you watch the film, have an area of expertise that brings out why it's a problem when a disaster strikes, whether it's climate change, global warming, building codes, tornadoes, everything. And so, that's what makes it interesting to watch because you're getting hit from all these different directions. Like, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that. And we really need to think of everything.
Yeah. So the one about FEMA cracks me up because people always pounce on FEMA, but FEMA's like, hey, you're moving into a flood zone. Hey, 40% of the U.S. population is headed towards the coast. And the other thing that like really like gets me about building codes, especially with natural disasters, it's it's repetitive by nature. Like it is nature. Like that is the process of nature. It's all about patterns, right? And even with earthquakes, might not be a pattern, but there is a buildup over a period of time. That period of time is very extensive, but eventually it's going to pop. That's what fault lines do. And so it's like just to ignore that, to play this game of, well, I know it happens in this area, but I don't want to focus on it. It's just amazing to think about, and so it's nice and refreshing to hear as a guy who used to be in FEMA. You see Brock Long with like the FEMA the shirt on, and he's like, hey, here are your problems, and you're going to keep having problems, and we can't address that. It's going to outpace us, and it is outpacing us. And I was like, yes, that is exactly right. Like we can be the absolute best, and I'm pretty arrogant. I believe I am one of the best at my job, but I can't fight nature if you don't prepare for nature. And I've been to so many disasters where it's like go into a neighborhood and everyone's in shock. PTSD is just climbing, exponentially, and you're like, man, this could have been prevented. Like that's like that pain point for me. I don't know.
And most disasters, there's something you could have done to prepare better. It was really telling. One of the things that Brock talked about was at FEMA, people always come to them and argue that they don't want the flood level raised from 8 feet to 9 feet or 9 feet to 10 feet. And they'll argue and question that. And it's like they're giving you data that shows what could happen to you. You need to prepare for it.
Mhm.
And people would fight that. Building codes it's another great example. Builders are trying to save as much money as possible. They're in a business. And so how do you change that conversation? Well, we have to demand more as the public. We have to ask, how much safety thought did you put into this? How will my house survive these disasters? I live in Tampa, Florida, and so many structures here on the second floor are still being built with wood. And there's an apartment complex down the street that's all wood from the ground floor up.
Jeez.
And you're going, well, this is a hurricane bullseye area. Everybody says Tampa is due for a major hurricane,
Yeah.
yet they still continue to do that. And that's a human psyche thing. It's like, I have neighbors that don't have generators. They don't really have a plan for hurricanes. They go, we'll just evacuate. I don't think they've ever read their insurance policy to know whether they're even fully covered, because there are different exclusions in an
Mm.
insurance policy depending on what the disaster is. So people just live aimlessly, assuming everything is going to be okay. And there was a great quote in our film by Joseph Barbera, the professor from George Washington, where he said that he used to work in emergency management. He said, "Hope is not a strategy."
I love that.
It's a
I
great
love
line.
that so much.